Hey Adrian, it's awesome to have you back. You're over in the UK, so it's pretty late over there. So we're what, 6 hours? 6 hours time zone difference here. And I'm glad to have you back on the podcast. I believe you and I did an episode in 2020. And my God, so much has changed since then. And there were some questions I wanted to ask you then that I don't think I did. And if you're okay, I would love to just start there.
Absolutely. No, it's a privilege to be here, Penny. I really appreciate the invite back. I really enjoyed the first episode we did. So absolutely more than happy to dive in and answer any questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it's just amazing for someone who's never dealt with uh, patents and inventions and raising venture capital and those kinds of things. Just kind of sitting back and watching your progression as you've announced all of the great things that are happening in your life. It's been a real reality check for what this takes. But as I mentioned in the introduction, Adrian's a food scientist. So, my most basic question is I always think back to being in college. And then when I finally went for my master's degree, I met a lot of different people at that university. And I was like, well, dang, if I knew I could have been that when I grew up, maybe I wouldn't have gone into nursing, right? So where did the interest in food science come from? I think that's just the most curious thing I can ask right now to start off.
That's a great question. So I guess it started when I wanted to be a chef, and I had an interest in cookery. And what happened is I had the opportunity to do a bit of work experience, and I went into a kitchen, like a proper restaurant, four-star hotel kitchen, and probably within half an hour thinking I don't want to be a chef anymore. But so I had an interest in food, and what it took is, it's when sometimes when you're at school you get like a special teacher that kind of stands out and believes in you. And there's a teacher that I had, called, I still remember her name, Mrs. Bedford, and I did it at GCSE, which is kind of like a bit of like, just before you, from that you had the opportunity to leave, high school and go on to do A levels and university in the UK. And it was during that time that we started to do a little bit of, basically food science, which is around understanding how food is made up of the different parts in like the fats, proteins, carbohydrates, etc. And I found that bit quite interesting. And then and because this lady believed in me, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and do this at a higher level. So when I did A levels, and when I started to learn, it was the thing that really caught my imagination is what happens to a, you've got all these different ingredients that go into cake. What happens from when you're mixing it all the way to when it's coming out the oven? And I just found that absolutely fascinating. I don't know why the call me sad, but that was one of the things that I thought actually that's really interesting to see how all of these things interact to create a cake or a loaf of bread. And it just kind of took my imagination. So then I went and studied at university, and I then got a first class honours degree, and I found myself I was teaching other members of the class. So thinking, okay, there's something here. So let's go and take this further again. Let's see how far I can push this. When I did a PhD, and then after about 4 years of studying bowls and cakes, I thought, this is great. I've got a nice big thesis. I can open and can leave the door open on it, but it doesn't really help anybody. So I thought, let's do something tangible with all of that experience and all of that knowledge that I built up. And then I first started to work with a major breakfast cereal company in the UK called Weetabix. I think you have the products over in the States. And then I was developing, using all of those skills from my food science, composing new, at times quite innovative products throughout my kind of 20 odd year career in corporate, which is then launching, multi-million pounds revenues. And in the process, and this is what I enjoyed the most, you hear some of the feedbacks. So one of the products developed from scratch into France, which is a creme brulee Tassimo disc. I think you also have Tassimo in the US, where you put the water in, and the idea is you put the water in and then it swells up in the cup, and you basically get like a dessert type texture with coffee. So it's like a delicious, dessert type coffee drink. So we've got some patents off the back of that, and they threatened to delist and stop selling the products in France. And there's like this big uproar of all the people saying, "No, we're loving it, we're loving it, we're loving it." So when you kind of get that, mass, I think it actually won an award for Flavor of the Year in France. So when that happens and you realize that you're delighting so many different people, that's the thing that gives me the buzz. Where you can use all the the techie science stuff, but in actual fact, when you get consumers go, "Wow, this is really nice," you know that you've used your skills for the good to help other people, and that's, I guess, always been the driver for me.
I absolutely love that because bread making is always interesting because it's chemistry.
It is.
Organic chemistry wasn't my greatest subject in college, but it's truly chemistry. But something that you mentioned was that Miss Bedford believed in you. I mean, doesn't that, it really does make a difference when you're running with something that's important to you, when you have someone that believes in you, because sometimes we don't immediately have those people saying, "Oh my god, I love this." We don't always have proof of concept or the evidence that something's going to turn out great when we start.
Exactly, exactly. And I think when I go back to my school days, I was like I didn't have much confidence. I didn't really believe in myself, and and sometimes you just need someone to believe in you, to then so you start to believe in yourself. I think that's and that's what she did for me. And when you have a passion for something, and then someone's behind you and believes in you, and then you start to get progress and you start to get traction, and you start and the confidence starts to build, then that belief then I think comes into you, and that's when things start to change.
Yeah, and I think that today, with everything being so digital, and social media is not as curated as it once was, but people still only show what they want to show. I feel like my son's generation, he's 27, and the millennial generation, it's hard for them to see that evidence and to have that belief because they're constantly bombarded with information that there's something better and different. And they can tend to compare themselves. I'm not saying all kids do, but to be in that moment and then to also see, like, I travel in the airport. And I mean, I've been guilty of it too, but parents will be face down in their phones. And you see teachers share these stories where kids talk about when they go home from school, their parents' faces are in their phones the whole time. Like, people don't know how to communicate anymore. And that second piece of that connection with her, talking about somebody being behind you. You and I both know an Olympian. We'll just
Yeah.
name him, Jason Parker. We're going to give credit where credit's due here. He introduced a concept to me, and I think you were probably in the coaching program at that time too. It's called racking. Recognize, acknowledge, and celebrate. And sometimes we're bombarded with information around us that we don't often recognize the small achievements and how those small achievements build up to a crescendo for that impact. So when you talk about recognizing the things that are going right, what are some things that you do to reinforce to yourself that you're on this right path? Because clearly bringing people joy through their taste buds is your jam. That's what you love to do.
Exactly, exactly. So I guess one of the things that I do, and well, none of the listeners can see this, but I have a sheet of paper that I fill every day with little wins, because the point that you make, I think, is really important, because when for the generation that I was, back then, I didn't have social media, and there wasn't that same comparison. But now, all the kids, and well, in my son's secondary school, they've all got phones. My son doesn't have a phone because we purposely not gave him one, because it just creates, I think, at this age, the age of 11, I think it creates more trouble than it's worth. And all they're doing is constantly comparing themselves, and just most of the time just dragging themselves down. So one thing that I really make sure I do and understand the importance of this is any little win that I get, it goes down, because literally it's right next to me. So it's, and that way it's you keep the positive trajectory. If you don't, at least from my point of view, and I've gone through a phase of not doing it, it's basically, oh God, that's going wrong. Oh, what's that going on here? That's not going wrong. I need to go and do that. And all of a sudden you find yourself in this negative spiral. So that is for me, the most effective thing. Just have a little, A4 sheet next to you, and just go through it, and just, it takes a second. Oh, I've just got a great win now. I've got a meeting with a major supermarket. I'm gonna put that down now. Or even if it's a small one, you've just seen the sales pick up after you've just done a discount. And all of those little things just help to build the momentum and the confidence in what's going, because otherwise it's very easy, because at the same time, a lot of things don't go the way that you want to, sometimes for good reason, but it's very easy to be pulled down if you're not careful. That's what my experience.
Yeah, the brain's wired to survive or thrive. And thrive mode means staying in our habits so we don't have to burn calories. And survival mode is looking out for, what do I need to be aware of? And definitely the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we think gears that entire emotional state. But talking about what you're doing, I reflect that to my clients all the time, and I encourage them to develop this habit of recognizing, because that's how we develop our self-trust. And especially when you're an entrepreneur and you're constantly going into different ventures. Now, you work with several corporations. You hold, what is it, 28 food patents?
Yeah, I think probably it's gone up a little bit now, but yeah, around that sort of, 28, 30, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's just a huge reflection of creativity and ingenuity. When did you decide to strike out on your own and leave corporate? I mean, what is that even like? Did you already have something in the works, or did you just say, okay, I have this much in my savings, I'm just gonna go for it?
Yeah. So what it was is I knew that it was something that I wanted to do, and was then screwing away money to enable that to happen. So that probably it's something I planned for a couple of years, because what I found as a pattern, where I was, going from job to job to job, and I'd learned something. Okay, great, I know what I'm doing now. Let's go and do something else, and let's go and do something else. And at that point, I realized, well, maybe this corporate life isn't what I need to do, because I was just doing that because I wanted to challenge myself and see how far can I push this. And when you kind of reach that limit, it's kind of, okay, I'm there now. What's next? So I knew that I wanted to start my own business, and probably at the same time very naive in terms of the challenges, and to be honest, some of the immense challenges that you've got, because at that point you don't have the security of the paycheck coming in every month, and things always take double, triple the amount of time that you think it will take, and that was I think a real challenge to do. So in the end, it got to the point where, okay, I've done all this stuff. Now let's make, and I intuitively know, okay, this is the time. I'm ready. There's cash in the bank. Let's go and do this.
Yeah. And it's interesting, since you and I like last chatted face to face. I mean, we've stayed in touch electronically, but to like actually sit and chat face to face, I've made a conscious effort to stay connected with people who aren't necessarily in the coaching space, because to do what you've done is very different than to be a hypnotist and to offer services, because it requires capital.
Mm,
It requires contracts with multiple vendors. The margins aren't necessarily the same in the beginning. There's a cost outlay, and with food, I'm sure there are all kinds of regulations and hoops and those things that you jump through. Like, when you first stepped into this entrepreneur role, which I just find totally ironic. It's no accident. I mean, it's the challenge of all challenges. It never ends. What was one of the biggest what was one of the biggest challenges you faced right out of the gate?
I think initially, I think there's on two levels really. One was that of solitude and going from a place where you're just surrounded by people to, oh, it's me, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do that, and I've got to do that. And you realize that everything is just completely on your shoulders, and you've got, at that point, I had no mentors, no advisors, there was nothing. It was just me at a desk or in the kitchen creating the product. So there was that, which is for me was quite big and certainly took some time to get used to. No set working hours at all. You know, I was working sometimes 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I found that I needed to do that and push myself. And I guess the other element was just to take the product, because I've done product on a small scale. So I would go and take it to food fairs or district shows and sell it off, and people going, okay, I really like this, I want to buy it. And okay, great. But I knew that I couldn't make the product. At that point, it started off as dairy product. I knew that I couldn't make it in the kitchen, you know, just to go through all of that. There was all of these approvals from environmental health, etc., trading standards on the labels, just to get to that point. But I knew then the only way that you can really make some serious money and make serious impact is by volume with food and drink. That's the only way you can do it, because you know you may only make, I don't know, 20p, 30p, 40p on a drink. You have to make a lot of drinks and sell a lot of products to start getting some, you know, some decent revenues that you can then invest into marketing, etc. So the biggest challenge I had was finding a manufacturer. I had a great idea. I had some very small scale proof that people liked it, but you know, but even then it wasn't massive. Literally, you know, sold a couple $100 worth of drink at that point in time. So it wasn't huge.
Yeah.
But I just knew that I needed someone to help me, and that took me probably the best part of 2 years to
Wow.
to crack, right from the idea, okay, I need to find someone, to then finding somebody, and then after all of that work, it fell apart in 6 weeks.
I remember that you had a contract with British Airways, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
First
And
ever customer. Yeah.
it was something that was completely out of your control, a manufacturing issue that led to that falling apart.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, they just weren't keeping the quality standards up on the product, and then the complaints started coming. It's one of those things where I knew it wasn't right, but they say, oh, you know, they literally fund everything. They can reach it. They told me, oh, they can reach all these other customers. It's going to be massive. So I'm thinking, okay, let's just go with this. It's taken me 2 years to get to this point. I can't just walk away now. And then when I was doing an inspection, I left them for 2 weeks to just, you know, if it's going to fall over, I thought let it fall over, and it fell over. They weren't cleaning the product, the line after it was all sterilized, so that was getting the, you know, bacteria in after that was happening. So I went and inspected it. Product was all off because it's clearly dairy, and then luckily or unluckily, British Airways called me 20 minutes after I found out the issue, and I told them what was going on. I said, look, I'm closing it all down. And it was the hardest, easiest decision that I've ever had to make.
The hardest, easiest decision. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so it was hard because it'd taken me, 2 years of my time, effort, and energy just to get a product formulated, which took me probably 18 months before that to get formulated, to then test it, to then go complete all of the, regulations and ticks that you have to do to get a product into the market. So that was the hard part. I'd done all of that work and I literally had to let it all go, knowing that there's also at that point almost no cash in the bank, and because of the way that I had to stop it immediately, the manufacturer didn't like that and therefore didn't want to pay me for anything. So I had really nothing left. But it was also easy because from a value fit point of view, there's no way that I could sell a product that I knew was substandard. And it wasn't going to hurt anybody. It just tasted off because that's when, if you leave milk out too long, it just tastes off. It wasn't going to hurt anybody, but just the quality wasn't there. And therefore, that completely violated my own values. And therefore, from that point of view, it's an easy decision to make, but yeah, tough at the same time.
Yeah. You mentioned that when you were much younger, that like confidence was a real issue. How did this impact your mindset? Did you want to quit, or did you know there was something better waiting for you?
Mm, good question. It could have gone one of two ways. And for me, it went, I'm gonna I've done all of this work. I ain't giving up now. And a lot of that came through because I had fortunate enough to be working with Jim Fort in the coaching program when we met, and talking about responsibility. And the more responsible you are about something, the more likely you are to take action. So I just took full responsibility for that. And because in all fairness, I knew that something wasn't right, but took the decision to keep going because I wanted to make this happen, for the right reasons. But I kept going. And so after that happened, I thought, you know what, the only way I can move forward is I need to get investment because at this point I had nothing left. And it was just, I knew I had to do it. I wasn't going to stop at that point in time. We know that I knew there's a product that people wanted, and I was going to do whatever it took to bring it out there to market.
Yeah. So just to give everyone a little bit of context here, this product, you can see the sign behind him, Earth Drinks, that's the rebrand, but it's basically a breakfast in a bottle that you could just grab and go. So I want you to think that that was 2019 when that happened, August-ish 2019. You're getting back on your feet and looking for investors. You're taking full responsibility. And this was specifically geared to help busy parents, busy professionals. In the morning, they can get a healthy breakfast without having to sit and prepare a whole breakfast. And then the pandemic happened.
Exactly. When things couldn't get any worse.
When they couldn't get any worse. What is it in Florence Scovel's Shin, in the book The Complete Works? You and I, that's my money Bible. I still go back to that tattered book, but there's a passage in there about this man who became so desolate that he unalived himself. And 3 days after he unalived himself, the big breakthrough he had been waiting for shows up in his mailbox. So it's like, we do have these moments where we're like, my God, it could not get any worse. What was going through your mind? Because you laugh about it now, but I'm sure you probably weren't laughing then.
No. That's fair to say, yeah. I think so. Part of me, and this I guess is the optimist, sort of thinking, well, it's a good job that the thing with British Airways didn't work out, although they did say come back on board and they said they love the product, get yourself another manufacturer. But I was kind of glad because if everything was going really well and swimmingly, and all of a sudden, obviously, everything was shut down because of the pandemic, then that would have been an absolute kicker, and that would have been a challenge. But having done that, and I went out to raise investment, and clearly because it is an on-the-go product and people are sitting at home, all the investors were saying, nope, not a chance, because I had very little to show for it, really. I just had an idea still. But even, even at that point, some sales traction on British Airways, but 6 weeks wasn't really enough to tell the story. So it was it was a punch in the stomach, really. And if I'm honest, it was, oh God, what do I do now when cash is already tight and I can't raise? And it took me probably the best part of 18 months from that point to start, getting the traction and finally get, the first, I think it was someone gave me £5,516, and I was jumping up and down when that happened, because it was
Yeah.
just enough, just when I needed it to start making some more ingredients work. Because I couldn't even then make the product to give to investors. They said, "Can we have samples?" Well, no, because some of the specialist technologies that goes into making the product, I couldn't do that. I couldn't afford to do it. So it was like a chicken and egg situation, an absolute nightmare. But that just goes back to my point earlier, when you have to really take note of the little wins. So, it just, even if an investor expresses an interest, that's a win. If you get a conversation with them, that's another win. And all of a sudden you start to build the momentum internally, and then things start to ripple out. That was the only way that I found to keep going, because you get so many no's. It's, it's crazy.
And you and I being in that coaching program, gratitude is one of the hugest components. I think it was the most life-changing component. Yes, taking responsibility. We have the power of choice, all of these things, but you know, that 5,000 pounds, what did you say? 5,600
Yeah, about
pounds?
£5,516.
He knows it. 5,516 pounds. Like you become as grateful for 1 pound as you would be 1,000,000 pounds.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
to not take those things for granted. What were some of the things that you were doing through that time to keep your head in the game? Because there are a lot of different ways that we can address things, and I'll let you talk about it a little bit later, but I've watched you share, and I know that you continue to stay on your mindset game.
Mm.
And it's just an evolution. And it was interesting because yesterday I was looking up some statistics. I think it's the Proctor Gallagher Institute says that with any business, it's 5% strategy and tactics. The other 95% is who you're being when you show up. And I can tell you from what you've already shared, I probably would have walked away. I would have walked away because it's a huge transition to go from knowing you're getting a paycheck to having all of that on you and assuming responsibility for providing. So how did you keep from just being overwhelmed by it all?
Yeah, it's so the other part to that, which we learned obviously in the coaching program, was around um, basically self-hypnosis, and that's what I used, twice, sometimes 3 times a day, to really focus on, it's and it sounds bizarre, and it can feel a stretch when you first start, but it's already done. I've already got the £250,000 that I was raising, and it had been raised to go, oh, it's only 5,500. That I need, quarter of a million. This is doesn't even touch the sides. When you have that gratitude, massive, that is an absolute game changer. Because, and you just keep that positive, you can see the vision and you can see it clearly, you can feel it, then you're only going to go one way. It's when you take your mind off that and you start to see things not going wrong, or you're not getting the traction, you're not getting the meeting with the investors, the investors are saying no. It's for a myriad of different reasons that you can own personal opinions and beliefs about the category or the market or whatever it is. Or maybe they're like me. I don't think there's many people that like that, but there are some people that there's just not personality fit. And to just keep that belief and that vision is for me was probably one of the most important things, as well as the gratitude, because otherwise, like you said, I think most people would have given up. And when and ultimately, and it kind of goes back to the that Simon Sinek says about the why and why you're doing it. And as my son was born prematurely, and that kind of initiated the whole concept of the drink, where I was missing breakfast cereal in the morning and thought, how can I put this bit into really convenient formats for smooth, you can drink it through a straw, and it's just super healthy and super nutritious and super easy to have in the morning. Because I was once seeing my son in hospital, but there's many people that just absolutely crazy in the morning, don't perhaps feel like it, or they just don't have the time. So having that taking back to that root of why am I doing this? I remember what it was like at those times, and I want to help other people that are necessarily in the same situation, but they've got their own stresses in their life. How can I do just one small step and contribution to help them, every day, every morning? And when you kind of put all of those elements together, you've got something that's very powerful.
I know that some people are probably thinking gratitude. How can you have gratitude? There's no money coming in, there's bills to be paid, and there's a fine line between being aware of your responsibilities and being caught in worry over those things. Now, what was the breakthrough moment for you? When did you know that the tide was turning? I mean, you already had it in your mind, you knew it had turned, but when did you get the proof in your physical reality that things were shifting?
So what it was is I went on to an investment site I think actually it's across the world, called Angel Investment Network, and I put the pitch on there. Again, that took money to invest in that, so it was one hell of a punt at the time. So I put it on there and started to get interest coming through. And remember, at this point, all it is an idea. That's it. It was just me, sitting down, writing a deck, putting some financials together, creating a nice story, and just hoping and praying that someone believes in me, which a lot of people say the founder's more important sometimes than the idea, but making sure they believe in me and what I'm trying to create. And when I started to get this interest coming through, then that's when things started to change. First 5,000 came in, then the 10,000 came in, and then as I closed the rounds later on, I was getting £50,000 sums, and all of a sudden I overfunded, and I think I raised 273,000 on the first pre-seed round. And it's funny how when the momentum starts, all of a sudden it just goes and goes and goes, and it snowballs. And it's fascinating as your vibration changes and gets higher, the quicker things happen.
Absolutely. And I know it's far-fetched to some people, but in my world, I love vibration. It's everything. So when did you start actually getting the product back into market? Because I know that you've done a rebrand. I love the new branding. So take us a little bit through that and where this is going now, and just how things in general are shifting and changing for you with the growth of the awareness of earth drinks.
Yeah, sure. So I raised the first start. I started to get some of the money in 2021. 2022, we closed the round, and you would think at that point, Adrian, you're home and dry now. You've got the money. All you've got to do now is just to go and make it happen. But unfortunately, we had more challenges with the Ukrainian war kicked off literally just after we completed the raise. And then what happened is all the manufacturers shut down because they had supply chain challenges. They just struggled to get ingredients in to make the products they're doing already. And they weren't willing, because I had somebody on board in the UK to make it, and they weren't even willing to talk to me. We cannot take anything in. So I'm thinking, okay, so now I'm burning through cash because we're getting all the the branding redone. We're reformulating the product to be a plant-based, oat milk-based drink. And all I'm doing now is I'm burning cash, but we're not getting anywhere. So we had to then overcome all challenges, or we had to look elsewhere. And eventually we found a great partner in Finland to make the drink, and who are absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. So everything happens for a reason, as I like to say. And then so we eventually launched the product, and we got this is kind of a thing that was building, where I was also, as well as doing all of that and just bringing the product into market, doing all the investment, I was also selling at the same time. So I'd started a conversation and been declined twice before from an online retailer, which is the largest online supermarket in the UK and probably I think in Europe, called Ocado. And I've been declined from them twice, but I'm not the kind of, you probably realise, not the one to take no for an answer. So they kept knocking on the door, and anyway, they got a new buyer in, and she really liked it, loved it, like what the whole idea. And they had their own challenges with everything going on with the war. And eventually we agreed for her, we call it listing. In other words, it's kind of a listing in their catalogue, for want of a better description. And so we agreed to list at the end of 2022 and launched with all the trials done in Finland. We had to start all of that all over again to make sure that we could produce the products in Finland. And then we launched at the back end of February 2023. So that's the process. And at that point, great, kind of, we're in market now. But in reality, and to give you some context, it was I registered the business in 2013. That was when I had the idea. Maybe a little bit too early to register a limited business, but I wanted to do it properly. So that by that point, it had been 10 years, right from the idea to bringing it into market. And ironically, I was only at the start line, because you've got products into market now, and you've got this is the hardest bit. It's now building the brand and bringing people on board. And what's happened since then is we've seen great sales from Ocado. We then moved into a wholesaler selling the product also nationally across into independent health food stores. And on top of that, we've now got conversations with 3 of the 4 biggest retail supermarkets within the UK. We've got talks with major airlines. We've got a trial agreed with a very large food service business over in the UK, and which will then open up the biggest distributor in the UK, which gives us even bigger national coverage. So there's a snowball effect that's happening at the moment, which is amazing. But at the same time, it creates challenges, because to launch a food product is not cheap, and to then get it into scale it is, because you've got to put the marketing funds behind it, you've got a working capital to be able to produce all the product as well. So now, I'm going through a second round of investment to be able to finance all of that and to keep growing and scaling the business. So it's a never-ending challenge.
And I think that most people don't realize that, because in any business, not just in what you're doing, but when you're talking a physical product, especially, growing too fast, if you don't have that foundation and those systems and the infrastructure in place, it can impact your reputation. It can impact the brand. But I really want to highlight, I've noticed, at least in the coaching space, there's a big pushback against the idea of resilience. Like, people are literally beginning to get turned off by that word, but resilience and resourcefulness. is what has gotten you to where you are. I mean, would you argue with that at all?
No, not at all. I think you hit the nail on the head. Those are the two key words. If anyone says to me, "What do you need to become an entrepreneur?" You need those 2 points. You need to be resilient because you'll get kicked down for so many times. It's not even funny. It's crazy. You will get almost 1,000 no's and a yes. And as long as you put up that barrier and you keep on going, otherwise, if you don't have that, then you need to work on it, and really through some of the tools that we've spoken about already. And resourcefulness is also so important because when you don't have the hard capital in your pocket, what are you going to do to create and demonstrate to people that you've got something special? So, for me, it was, going and asking friends, and my wife was doing as well, students at the workplace. Yeah, here you go, here's a drink, go and shoot a video, and I'll go and put that on social media, or I'll go and send that to an investor. So all of a sudden, you're making everything look bigger than it really is. You're painting a bigger picture of what it can be, and allowing people to buy into that. The resourcefulness is absolutely, absolutely crucial.
Yeah. And, what really triggered that thought for me is when you were talking about going through that round of funds. And it's like, what did you do? You went back and you started looking for investor pages. You put together a pitch deck. You just didn't stop. And did you have someone to guide you on that path of looking for investors in different avenues to travel down to create that? Or did you have to figure that out on your own?
Back again, it froze for some reason.
Yeah, we'll flip that part out.
That's
So
fine. I can what I can do is I caught up to. Did you have anyone to help you? So what I can do if you want is I can pick up from that point to help the editing.
yeah, so did you have someone to show you the ropes to be resourceful, or did you figure all of these things out on your own?
So what I did, and I'm a firm believer that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I was, as part of my searching, I was looking for people that can help me because I knew, I'd never put together an investment pitch deck before in my life. I can Google it and I can try and understand what needs to go in it, and that's what I did. But I knew that I needed some more specialized help. And there's a guy called Phil that literally, like an angel, just appeared out of nowhere and said, "Oh, I know what you're trying to do. I can help you because I've raised funds myself." And he worked with me for free, to pull together, took my pitch deck and helped me to refine it and to fine tune it until eventually it was there. And I think that's really important. It's knowing, it's very easy to try and go, what, I'm going to do everything myself, which you kind of have to do, but also you have to know your limitations and know what you can't do. And, and then go and ask for help because there are people out there that will willingly, and I still do this for other people now after what Phil did for me, and will help people to fine tune investment decks or pitch decks to supermarkets or whatever, and just give a bit of my time up because it's the least that I can do. And I think it's that INI principle as well that we've learned.
Yes, and I've talked about Einie on here before. It's probably been a while, but if you're wondering what he means by Einie, it's an ancient Incan term, and it's about the law of reciprocity, of giving without expectation of anything in return. And it's really the way that the universe operates. And I really, want to highlight something. In my earlier podcast episode I recorded today, we were talking about mindset and how so many people think that wealthy people are bad and rich people don't care about other people. He mentored you and didn't charge you. Most wealthy people I know are willing to mentor other people when they're self motivated and they're in the trenches and they're actively creating. I mean, has that been your experience for the most part?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think what people in that position tend to do is they can relate and almost takes them back to when they were at that time, and they just want to help.
Yeah,
If they see the potential in the person, and they can see that they're not, you know, just trying to take advantage, they're generally just trying to make a difference, then these people just come out of the woodwork to
yeah,
help and support those guys every time. And it's funny because it's as I go through the journey, there's always been a pattern where, because I like to help others, when I need help, then all of a sudden somebody just appears out of nowhere to help me. It's really funny how that principle of Arnie works, but it's so true and it's so powerful.
yeah. So, what is your vision for where this is going to go this year? Where do you see yourself by the end of 2023? I mean, I know it's just one more quarter. Um, so in terms of manufacturing, that may not be that long compared to other businesses, but where do you see this going?
I would The vision for by the end of 23 is to have closed the funding round that I'm doing at the moment, which is about sort of just over $400,000 to get that closed, to close off some of the discussions with the major supermarkets. We wouldn't be launching until next year because they've got these only a couple of windows in the year. So the next window would be spring next year to get that done, and also to hopefully have the first bit of European business. At the moment, we're just in the UK, and we've already got strong interest from a major supermarket in Ireland. So if we can tick those boxes off, and you know, done some supporting marketing work behind that, so that we've got everything ready to go for a big 2024, then yeah, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, you've had a whole team of people behind you helping you from your marketing. I know you're still doing mindset work and coaching work and all of those things, and I think that just speaks volumes that when we have something that we really want to grow, it doesn't matter if it's service or product based, we just can't do it all ourselves.
Mm.
And to give ourselves permission, like it doesn't say anything about us that we can't do it all ourselves. So before we wrap it up, is there any one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's thinking, oh, well, this all sounds great. And you talked about how you had these ups and downs and challenges, but I don't know. I think maybe entrepreneurship isn't for me, or I'm not sure I can do it. What would you say if someone has this burning desire to do something, but they're holding back from it because they're afraid of this unknown?
Yeah, for me, it's 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 probably the simplest, hardest thing, and this is the fact that if you have an idea, if you have a passion that you want to do something, then it's already done. Because the fact that you have the passion, there's millions, billions of people in the world, and the fact that you have that passion to do means that you were meant to do it. There was a reason, that you are here on this earth at this time, and it's to serve. Almost certainly, if you have that strong passion like I did and still have, that's the reason for being. And when you accept that and truly embrace it, then anything becomes possible. Then the only thing that's standing between you and your dream is yourself. There's nobody else. It's all in the head.
Yeah, it's
And
the
that's when it's
thoughts, the
so important
beliefs.
then to work with people, like yourself, Penny, other coaching programs, and to get that expertise around you to help you do that. Just like I had Mrs. Bedford back when I was at school that had that belief and taught me the things that I needed to do. Purely at that point, it's purely an academic point. But now, when you're an adult and you want to become an entrepreneur, to have that person that's going to believe in you and have that faith in you to enable you then to believe in yourself. You don't have it at this point in time, and maybe you have some self-belief, some trust in yourself, but it's still in its infancy. To bring those people around you that when things go wrong, and they do go wrong, you've got that support around you to lift you up, and you see that when things are going wrong, in actual fact they've not gone wrong at all. It's actually something that's my mindset is always there's something better coming. I just didn't see that one coming, and inevitably that better thing will always come. So it's for me, it's just really important to follow those principles, and then that's when things starts to happen. That's when the magic happens.
Beautiful. Tell people about the drink, where they can currently get it, and where people can follow along so they know when it's available in their area.
Sure. So at the moment, it's very much based in the UK, in the UK market. Obviously available on Ocado is the easiest place. We're also on Amazon, but again, UK only, and off the website, earthdrinks.com. So that's where you can find us, and hopefully, with time, I'd like to enter the American market. So hopefully, some of your listeners will get the opportunity to try Earth. Of course, if you're over in the UK as well, then definitely look us up and get some products to you.
Beautiful. Adrian, thank you so much for being willing to share this journey, because it's interesting, one, to just kind of get a behind the scenes view of what happens with bringing a product to market, but two, to just know that, when you stick with it and you're surrounded by the right people, when you have your team, when you have that trust, when you have that confidence, that if you stay with it, like you said, it's already there for you. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story.
You're welcome, Penny.
All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, or you can screenshot this episode, share it on your Instagram stories. You can tag me, and I believe you have an account for Earth Drinks on Instagram. No?
Correct. Yes. And you can follow us
Yes.
on Instagram as well.
All right. So we'll have those links for you. Everyone, I'll see you next week.